farming is very difficult, right? And not only for conventional bigger farms, but also for small scale. Like getting end meets is often a challenge, and many farms go out of agriculture because of financial difficulties. And then my conclusion was really that because of the price of land, which is way much more than your normal farming activity can support. And we know a lot of farmers also don't pay themselves really salary, or they reinvest all they have into their farm. So the only way they can retire is selling the farm at high price, which is not a sustainable model, because who can buy the $2 million farm? It's not something who's just starting. So the whole system is not working.
So, hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today we have a very unique and special guest, Stephanie Wang. Stephanie is a farmer from around here. She's a grower. She just published a beautiful book on Asian vegetables. And it's a really, really nice book, and we'll have a chance to talk about that. It's actually not just a very nice book. It's one of the nicest books that I've seen in recent years. So congrats on that.
I agree. Super, super nice.
And Stephanie is also, she farms at Rizen. You'll talk to us about that. You're also an activist. You're deeply involved into a lot of cool projects. And so welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
Yeah? You want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can talk.
So, Stephanie, I've seen on your website you say how market gardening is not just a profession or a way of life, but something that's political, social, and economic. Mm-hmm. I kind of want to delve into that a little bit. What about it is political?
Yeah, everything basically what brought me to agriculture was the political aspect, because at first I studied sociology, undergrad and master degree. And for me, during my studies, I went to India and then did some internship with farmers. And really what draws me to agriculture was how food and agriculture was so essential to our life. And how, we eat 3 times a day. So it's the basic thing that we have good food for us. So I went to India, and then there agriculture was so present because, everyone was a farmer or knew a farmer or had farmers in their family. So the movement was really strong. And it's quite different from here, where we are only 1% of the population farming. So being there and seeing a strong farmers movement and being involved with Via Campesina, which is a worldwide peasant movement, was really giving me a lot of energy and inspiration to keep in that way. And at first I was more like coordinating projects. So I visited a lot of farms. And when I came back here, I felt like that would be like the most concrete way for me to get involved, to start a farm, start farming, and do a project that has my color.
Mm-hmm. When I met you, Stephanie, you were involved with Via Campesina, and I think you were also with the NFU or...
Yes, after India, when I came back in Canada, I worked with the National Farmers Union, coordinating the International Program Committee, which is working with Via Campesina, and I also did the same work with Union Peasant. Yeah. So Union Peasant and NFU are the 2 member organizations of Via Campesina in North America, and eventually we want to welcome more member organizations.
Do you want to tell us Via Campesina who they are? Do they still exist? Because
of course, it's the largest.
Come on, tell us.
Social movement in the world, because it's an organization that its member are member organizations. So each member organization, there are maybe 180 in the world right now, and some have hundreds of thousands of members. And they're all fisher folks, farmers, farm workers, peasants, rural workers. So really embracing all of the people that live from the land. And it's everywhere. In North America, because we're only 1% farming, it's like a bit weaker. So we have a big challenge to organize. Even though we're at the heart of capitalism, we're so weak in terms of agriculture, but so it's a struggle for us to to be as organized as, in Latin America and Asia. They're so organized, and there are really inspiring models there where especially in Latin America, they have like 46 schools. These are political training schools where they train all of the leaders to be able to train in their own communities. So everyone getting involved in the organization is trained politically, as well as in agroecological practices. So when they get into meetings and organizing, they have, the political training to do it.
Yeah, they're aware of the whole structure.
It's crazy to think that, like the United States, especially like the largest, I think, GDP or economy in the world, and the smallest amount of farmers in a way, and just how the disconnect there. And, we had Dave Chapman on the podcast, and he said something along the lines of, the U.S. isn't thinking about feeding the world is feeding them.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the fact that 40% of the vegetables and berries consumed came from out of the country.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same for Canada and even Europe right now. What's happening with the farmers there, that's what they...
And the farm workers are definitely not from the U.S. in many instances. That's for sure.
Do you have an example of, or a story to share of something you saw in India that really, like something that sticks out in your memory of something that really moved you, inspired you, motivated you? Yeah,
for sure. Once we were in Delhi for a protest, and there were like millions of farmers in the streets. So that really struck me in terms of the capacity of farmers there. They really have the ability to put pressure on the government and to organize themselves from local to national level.
What were they protesting?
No, they really felt all of the GMOs coming. That was part of the Green Revolution. And actually we studied farmers' suicides there and most of the time, they get indebted to buy seeds or inputs. And it's not a big amount, but for them, it's huge when they cannot pay it back. So,
Was that the time where they were all drinking glyphosate to kill themselves?
In that, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that were doing suicide, committing suicide by drinking glyphosate. It was,
Would you say that because farming is so present in places like that it sort of amplifies the impact when you see it? Because I'm thinking of, do you know Wendell Berry, the American writer? He was he was very famous he wrote a book called The Unsettling of America, which is a really famous book about how America's farming just went away. Like something like over 50% of people in the early 1900s were farmers, and now it's like 1%. But I feel like, just like you said, we don't have as direct a view of it. But if you're somewhere like India, it seems like it's much more in your face. Would you say that is true, like with your travels in different places, that it was just so much more present, and that's kind of a big thing that motivated you?
Yeah. At first, the environmental part and the love of nature, but also the need to grow good food, that was all part of it. And we always talk about farming, and I was surrounded by farmers, but here, like we do here in Freudenberg, we're a little hub, so we do always talk about organic farming, but it's not like...
It's not everywhere like that.
It's not everywhere on all tables.
And
so we're in our little bubble here.
Yeah. So I remember this very clearly. So when we met, it was a long time ago, but you came really, you made a strong impression on me because you were so fiery and so passionate and so political, more than people around me. And, we were all farming and busy doing our farming. And I know that you took that route for a little while. You did a lot of things like you're describing, and eventually you came back to farming yourself. Yeah. And I remember you kind of telling me, it's like, I feel that I want to do it and I want to get involved. And then you started your own farm, which is another chapter in your story, I guess, because it's been many years now. You want to tell us about how that happened and what the farm is and how it operates and how it's different also?
Yeah, when I think what you mentioned, like my political commitment definitely comes from Via Campesina, what I was talking, just getting into the political training and understanding the necessity and the importance. And so because, sometimes when we are here, we feel like, why would I spend so much energy and time getting involved into international level politics? But I think it really gives a lot of power to local struggles.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I wanted to say. And then the second...
We can come back to that.
Yeah.
For sure. We'll circle back to that.
Yeah, and then starting a farm. At first, I never thought about starting a farm by myself because I knew it was such a huge task. So at first I was talking to friends. We kind of brainstormed, and it never came out to anything. And when I moved to Fredericksburg, actually mostly because I get to know the region when I was doing an internship at La Grenette, then really felt like this is a really nice area. And then I met, there was the Bernard Alonso who had his insect farm, and he was looking for someone to grow Asian vegetables. So it was like, okay, I had this project in mind for a few time, but never thought I would start it by myself. But the fact that he was looking for someone doing this, and he had already prepared the land, and that it was, he had an idea of a collective farm where, there are different projects on the farm and we support each other.
My farm was that.
Yeah. So it was like a good setting for me to start. And I didn't want to get depths at first. I just started very, very slow and little, and got inputs and advices from all of the surrounding farmers.
When was that, by the way?
I started in 2016.
Okay.
And first started selling at another grower's farm market, and then slowly selling my own little bok choy and shiso leaves, and getting to know the chefs, and just seeing if there was a demand for it. And definitely there was one, so slowly expanding every year. But we still keep it small. Like now we're planning our 9th season for Le Rizen, and we grow only 1 acre of land, so it's still pretty small. We'll be 3 or 4 working full time, and then we have volunteers coming.
And it's still on that piece of land that you described earlier? It moved, the garden moved, but it's still on...
the garden moved 3 times.
3 times.
So at first I was there for 2 years, and then moved to Stanislas Pettigrew's farm for 4 years, and then we separated. So I went back to the same land, but the owner had changed. Bernard had sold the land to Les Coquagnes, which is a non-profit organization.
Didn't know it was the same land.
It's the same land. I'm not cultivating the same plot.
Yeah, a better plot.
But
I'm not sure.
You're not sure anymore.
Because the plot I'm doing now, it's, it used to be like a wetland.
Yeah, I remember.
So it's really not the ideal one. And there was an activity in Fredericksburg in February where they studied the map of, the agricultural land.
Oh yeah, I was there. I saw it.
100 years ago and today. And the guy who was participating in that research, he was like, you guys are cultivating one of the worst land in Fredericksburg. And there are so few like vegetable growers, and we end up with these kind of poor lands. So it's that's part of the...
Yeah, well, the obstacle is the way.
And yet, how is it going? Like, how is the land producing
for you? And we're still, it's producing. We are living out of it, but we just imagine how it would be on a good soil.
Yeah. So just so the listeners can know, that piece of land now there's another farm on that same piece of land. So there's 2 farms. There's a farm-to-table project, and now there's a collective warehouse that's being built into something else that's going to be used collectively also. Yeah,
so the nonprofit organization bought the land using community obligations. So they bought the land really quickly. In 30 days, it was bought with the support of the community. And the idea is to give like really accessible land for small businesses like me. And there's another organic vegetable farm. There's a guy starting Orchard project. So there's room for 6-7 small scale projects because it's only a 40 acres land. Not huge, but there's a wooded land, pasture.
And it's really close to the I don't want to say the city, the village.
Yeah, you can walk into town. You could, right?
Yeah, it's a good spot.
Could you tell us more about, because it's called Li Kokang for those listening, and could you explain a bit more detail, like the vision of that project? Because I think something that you're passionate about is farmland access and just farmers being supported by the local government and by society and culture in general, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that project is in line with those values, correct?
This episode is brought to you by Bootstrap Farmer. Bootstrap Farmer is an amazing company. It's focused on making high quality, durable, and ecological products for farmers and gardeners. They really stand out for me because one, they manufacture their product right in the US instead of relying on overseas factories. And two, they're focused on durability and sustainability. This means no single-use plastics that you have to rebuy every year, and no cheap, flimsy metal that won't last. Their hoop house kits are among the best out there, made of super thick galvanized steel that will stand out to the elements and last you a very long time, I guarantee it. And their seeding trays are absolutely indestructible. Believe me, we did a test here at the farm. A car ran over the trays and they literally didn't even deform. On top of that, Bootstrap team is passionately dedicated to seeing the farming community grow and thrive. And that really means so much to me. You know that's why I do what I do here at the Market Gardener Institute. So if you care about what kind of companies you support with your dollars, check out Bootstrap Farmer. You can find them out at bootstrapfarmer.com. Thank you, Bootstrap, for all you do. Love you guys. See you soon.
Yeah, definitely. It was such a good timing at the time when I had to look for a new land. I contacted few landowners, and because that would be my third move of my garden, I was like, okay, I want this to be the last move. I want it to be like a super clear lease, long-term vision, and it just came. Yeah, the timing was perfect because Li Kokang is really, for me, it's like a model for a future farm. It's a model of perennial farms. And 1 year or 2 years later, I wrote the text for perennial farms. But
we're going to get to that in a moment.
Yeah, definitely Li Kokang, because of the fact, first, we don't have to buy the land. We don't have to pay a mortgage on the land. The rent is really low. Also, because there are different projects there, there's another vegetable farm. So we bought the BCS together, the equipment. And because BCS is not something you'll use every day, 8 hours a day. So that's easily shareable. And, just the support, just every day be able to talk to each other, ask advices. I need help for that. Come over for 5 minutes. It makes such a huge difference compared to being just by yourself with your team. And it's drawing also. I think it's a good attractivity for our employees. Like it's harder and harder to find employees on farms, and the fact that there's a lot of synergies within the farm, and it gives a lot of, we have lunch together, and it gives life.
I didn't know that. You have lunch together.
Yeah,
it makes sense, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and we share vegetables, like our surpluses. So we do all organic Asian vegetables, but les siffleurs, the more classic organic vegetables. So it gives diversity and inspiration and support. And also Li Kokang they're really geared toward agrotourism. So starting 2 years ago, they started the farm to table events. So every weekend of the summer season, they invite chefs to come cook at the farm with our produce and produce from the area. And they host 1 to 2 groups per evening, and 20 to 25 people.
Yeah, so 2 seatings per meal.
Yeah, and Saturday, Sunday evening.
Yeah.
And it's a 5-course meal with wine pairing. So people really enjoy the experience, and they get to visit the farm before the meal. So they can see the farm and they say, okay, what I'm eating is really coming from the land. And the fact that it's invited chefs, so every weekend it's a different.
It's a different chef coming with
Yeah.
a different background, and then they get to meet you and then connect with the land. No, it's really, really,
and,
really
and there's
cool.
the pizza nights, which I guess is
Yeah.
more of a local
That's the
community.
best.
I know.
Pizza nights on Tuesdays. That really gathers more of the local community.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
fun.
So we're really lucky. We have pizza. We have pizza night on Tuesday.
Yeah.
We have Wednesday farmer night.
Yes.
Monday night
Have-
volleyball, which your wife plays.
Yeah,
with
I
me
don't
as
go
well.
to volleyball.
Yeah, but
And then we wanted to do something here at the Old Mill on Thursdays, but we're like, there's we need to rest at one point. We can't go and party every night.
maybe
Yeah.
eventually. When
Yeah,
the
we'll see.
timing's right.
I know Les Carottes does. They have
Yeah.
a pizza night on
Yes.
Thursday
Yeah, they do.
also, so
Exactly.
it's a bit further out. But
Yeah, that's for the employees. It's really great because you're coming to work on the farm, but there are so many activities, and you can really get to meet many people. So
What about the business model type structuring? Because I don't think it's really a cooperative per se. Would you? Or
Le Rizen?
Yeah, No, or Kokang, and then how does
Okay.
it structure in terms of economic business structure?
Yeah, Les Coquins is a non-profit. The idea is that it could become a land trust eventually.
Land trust. I was going to ask about that word.
But for now, we need to pay the land. And then eventually we could also organize into a co-op if it feels more suited. But it's like Rizen is an individual business right now. So different, and Siffler is a co-op. So any kind of model of business can come, rent the land. And we are working on a like set of internal rules for how we function together. It's still ongoing. We have not agreed on all the details, but it's very working on conviviality, and so far it's been really good. But we do, Stephanie Hinton is our director. She's the founder and director. She's the one leading the project and getting grants to do all the renovation and improvements. So it's been developing really fast. It's only a 2-year project, and
it's already like
Really
there's a lot going on.
yeah.
And do you feel like the nonprofit element at kind of the top of it actually simplifies the cooperative element a bit? Because instead of you all just being all on your own, I don't know, and maybe having a landlord that you have to deal with.
Yes.
Like it's different.
Yeah, for sure. You have someone committing her time and energy and contacts to supporting access for farmers. So something like Sarah Dent is doing for young agrarians. Like we as farmers, we just don't have enough time and capacity to do all of that at the same time as farming. So we need to have people or organizations supporting us. And it's funny how she says, Les Coquins as a nonprofit is not like a farm business. So she cannot apply to a lot of the MAPAC subsidies, or a lot of the MAPAC subsidy ask for that the person asking for the grant be itself a farmer.
Yeah. MAPAC is the state level
Ministry of Agriculture.
Yeah, Ministry of Agriculture here in
And
Quebec.
she feels it's stupid because, we don't have time to do all of that. We need people to support in organizations, and so they should be able to apply for projects that support us. So that's a lot of policies should be changed for following more.
So if we get the record straight, so there's a piece of land, it's owned by a non-for-profit, which has the agro-tourism perspective, and it's also serving as a hub for different farming enterprises. Then the different farming enterprises, they can be whatever they want. They can be, a for-profit, independent small business. They can be a co-op. They could be something else. They all come together and they share resources. And then in that model, you don't need to pay the mortgage on the land, and you can develop your business while having other businesses that are kind of mutually servicing each other.
Yeah. So what we are experimenting on the farm is also what, like Leslie Carbonneau, who used to work for the CLD, they are really documenting and researching for alternative ownership models for the land, but also even for businesses. So on the land, a lot of things are possible under the law, but they are not well known. So very soon she'll be releasing the research of her. I think she's been working on it for years, 2 years or more. Le chantier d'accès à la terre. So they describe different models of accessing the land and different partnerships, not just lease or so they're like amphithéoses or indivision.
So very, very specific kind of land trusts. Are they all kind of
No,
Land
they're
trust
not.
is a kind of model, right?
Yeah.
It's one.
It's only one.
One kind.
What is it
Yeah.
exactly? Could you explain a land trust?
So land trust is a legal mechanism where you affect a vocation to the land. So for us in Quebec and for Protecteur, who is the organization promoting land trust in Quebec, we demand for agroecological land trust because you could have land trust also in conventional GMO culture, but that's not what we want, right? So we want agroecological, social, community land trust. So the first one is Cadet-Roussel, you mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's been founded in 2010,
Long
so
time ago.
years ago. It took them 10 years to buy the land because the remaining challenge with land trust is, of course, getting the land.
Yeah.
Some people donate their land. That's very not very often the case, but because you want to give money to the owner so the person can still, retire. And so getting the land. And once you have the land, you can put it in the land trust for perpetuity. That's the power of the land trust, is that the vocation you give, it's forever.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, it's protected by law, and there's a committee of people from the community that is in charge of keeping the mission you give to the land trust. And land trust, and then there are different models. But in the case as Cadet-Roussel, which is the main model that we see here in Quebec, we protect the deep soil in the land trust. And then, like Cadet-Roussel, they own the surface property of the land.
Buildings is the business.
The buildings, the tractors, everything they build on the soil, still they own it, and if they leave, they can sell it.
Okay.
But the value will be less than if they would sell everything, including the land.
It's like taking conservation or preservation of farmland to the next step of the vocation as well. Well, because like in the U.S. at least, there's conserved land, which is not necessarily preserved farmland. There's a distinction, and conservation is often just for forest, to remain forest.
Yes.
But what I like about the land trust is that it's not just preserving the land itself, it's preserving what's done with the land, and the people that do that on that land.
Yes.
The vocation, vocation, conservation is a cool.
But there's a lot of links to do with conservation because, we have crown land, mostly here in Quebec, like in the eastern part.
North, right?
And in Ontario, like around Ottawa region, they have the green belt. So, and they rent that land. Medilo is now
they're there.
renting there. So many things we can do with the land.
Yeah. So the whole idea is like, instead of having a young, especially a young farmer, but any farmer, like going out of its way to pay for super expensive land, which is always getting more and more expensive, which is even worse in the U.S.
Yeah, and we've spoken about
when you
this a
compare
lot.
the prices here in Quebec and the prices in Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, upstate New York, it's way less here, but still it's so much. Yeah. If you can offset that and then kind of join into something that's built and designed for you to be able to operate.
Yeah.
That's your vision.
The whole rationale comes from the conclusion that farming is very difficult, right? And not only for conventional bigger farms, but also for small scale. Like getting end meets is often a challenge, and many farms go out of agriculture because of financial difficulties. And then my conclusion was really that because of the price of land, which is way much more than your normal farming activity can support. Yep. And we know a lot of farmers also don't pay themselves really salary, or they reinvest all they have into their farm. So the only way they can retire is selling the farm at high price, which is not a sustainable model, because who can buy the $2 million farm? It's not something who's just starting. So the whole system is not working. because of the fact that we need to buy the land at the price it is, and also we need to set up the farm. So,
it's expensive.
drain and bring electricity and water and
Buildings.
because there's no continuity also in between owners of the farm. So one farmer can have a really beautiful orchard. He's been taking care of it. It's been organic for 25 years, and then he's selling the farm, and then the people coming after, just want to do a vineyard. So it's just cutting all the trees and starting something again because of free entrepreneurship, which is, it's great in terms of liberty. You do what you want, when you want, but in terms of food sovereignty, it's really not ideal because you start everything new again every generation. So you're wasting resources, you're wasting time. For me, it's not a sustainable
So to
model.
lock it into what it is and to make it accessible for people to continue the work is what the goal is.
Yeah, I'm really doing more and more links with in between farming and education and healthcare system. Like you have a hospital there, and then you have doctors coming in to work in it. They don't need to own the surgery room or their tools there. They studied. They have their aptitude. They can save lives. But the hospital will stay open 24/7 despite who comes in or out of this institution.
Yeah.
Because we said this is essential for our society. We want this to run all the time, full time, and we will pay people the price so that we can afford to give this service in continuity. Of course, there are challenges. I'm not saying it's perfect, but the service is running and there's no cut. Because what we see now is we as entrepreneurs, as farmers, the day I want to, start a new career, I'm leaving, I'm selling the farm. So we need to start again.
Yeah, and then because you acquired it at a hefty price, when you're ready to leave, you want to sell it, and then that's going to be your like when I retire from my farm, we paid a price, we developed it, and then we're going to sell it more than we paid for. Otherwise, we're losing out. But what you're saying is that it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't. I should have paid less when I started, develop my business, and then when I'm ready to leave, the business can leave, but the farm stays, and somebody else can get in.
Yeah.
Keep on doing the work.
Yeah.
And all my. I don't want to put it personal, but that's pretty much what a lot of farmers are. It's like what's your retirement money and where is it? And in now today, what we have is a system where people, their retirement is their farmland.
Exact. And with perennial farm models, so with more and more land trust protecting the land and more co-op and nonprofit running operations, the goal is actually to pay yourself good salary so you can save money, and that's your retirement.
That's your
The farm is not your retirement anymore. And the farm is more and more bought into, ideally, with the support of the public and social and the community.
I really like that hospital analogy. It could be a school
really good
also.
analogy.
Like the teacher doesn't own the school. The
No.
teacher teaches at the school, and there's,
and it, I really I just love this whole topic because I was super passionate about this in particular back when I became a farmer in my mid-20s. And we were so riled up about the cost of land because we moved from a 10-acre to a 100-acre land. But luckily, one of the other farmers, his father had purchased the land because he had money. But it was unbelievably expensive because it's in Princeton, New Jersey, which is a super wealthy area. And it's pretty much just any rural area within a 2-hour shot of a city has gone through the same experience of the land getting more and more expensive because people are able to move to it and buy it that make their money somewhere else doing something a lot more, income earning. And that's what's happening where we live. I'm sure anyone living in this kind of environment sees that, a 5-acre lot goes up, there's a pretty average house on it and it sells for like nearly $1 million. And how is a 25-year-old that's like, I want a farm, supposed to buy that?
not possible.
It's not working.
So it's true. We, as a society, we have yet to figure out how to revalue farming, like in the scope of, whereas hospitals, we already did it, schools, we've done it.
Yeah.
But we're not doing that with farming.
Yeah. And we could talk about public subsidies because in Quebec, we really looked at from, the rest of Canada. They feel like, okay, in Quebec, it's the province where government is supporting more its farmers. So we have a lot of money going into all different farming programs every year. But when someone leaves agriculture, which is more and more now, so this money is going out of agriculture because when you sell the land, you might sell your equipment that you got through public subsidies. You sell it on marketplace.
So it's not coming back.
It's not. There's no guarantee that it stays in agriculture. So I feel like if this money would go into supporting, creating perennial farms, that would be much more sustainable.
The Market Gardener podcast is made possible by the fine work of the Market Gardener Institute. I started the Institute in 2017, and my objective then was to share a lot of the work that I had done on my farms, writing, researching, and to help empower and educate as many growers as possible. Fast forward all these years later, that's exactly what the Institute is doing. We offer online courses and resources to growers in more than 90 different countries. We have more than 7,000 students that have taken our classes, and it's making a difference. So that's really cool. If you want to get 15% off some of our select courses, it could be on winter farming, it could be on greenhouse production. Just use the promo code podcast15 and get 15% off. So now back to the show.
Can we move on to that, perennial farms?
Sure.
Because you wrote a really, really beautiful text. When did this originally come out?
So
In French, at least, the first.
Yeah, I wrote it in French in December 2022 after a screening at the Baie Betrave. They have Soirée des Possibles, so documentary screenings. And there was the documentary from Hugo Latulippe called Je me soulève.
Right, which in English, I think it's called, I had it written down, but I'm forgetting. Anyway.
It's been translated, the documentary?
No, but there is just, they have a name, and I think there might be a subtitle version.
Such a powerful documentary based on poetry to see how the new generations, feel in the actual context of climate crisis and so many crises, and they don't want to have child anymore because it's why having children in such a crazy world. But so using poetry to really get people to connect with their emotions, it was really powerful. And I wrote the text like in 3 days, and then shared it on social medias, and then Le Devoir also published
the big newspaper from here took it,
and with basically a petition kind of attached to it.
Yeah, people
right?
could sign it. So and I had a lot of messages, and still today farmers saying how they felt like they read it, and it was like I really felt the same.
It resonates.
Really felt connected.
Yeah, I'm one of them. So then it was translated to English. You did that with the Young Agrarians,
Young
right?
Agrarians, Sarah Dan, she came to visit a few months ago, and she saw it on the newspaper, and she said, okay, let's translate it.
So people can check it out online if they want.
Is it too long for us to read?
Oh, it's a few pages.
Well, we can just look at some segments here, because I really like a lot of what we already spoke about. It's in there in poetic form, but it's just very powerful, and it says a lot about how you feel about this for sure, but it's exactly how I think you and I feel. But just for the viewer listening, you can look up perennial farms for now and the future, and you can find it. But it starts off, you're obviously hinting at the fact that a lot of young, small farms, despite their dreamy social media posts, are going through a lot of struggles. And I think you're basically saying that you're fired up about the struggles of small scale farmers. And can you talk a bit about you've already kind of said it, but I guess we're just coming at it from a different angle, that the inspiration of really feeling this and feeling the struggle of a lot of farmers and how much there needs to be change and support for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we work so hard the land, and I've seen over the years, a few of our colleagues,
come and go,
decide to
stop.
to get a more paying job or, have a better quality of life. And it's totally understandable in the actual context. So what I write in the introduction to that letter is that basically the one who continue are either the most motivated, resilient, innovative, or just like stubborn.
Yeah.
So you have all of them.
Yeah.
You need a really deep commitment in order to keep going for more than 5 years, definitely.
Yeah.
Commitment, also training is part of it, but you do have people that are really well trained, and you need really personal abilities. You need to find your way. For us at Rizen, I think doing transformed products has been the key element for our survival, because we feel like it gives stability to our revenue. It gives an additional stream of revenue throughout the year, in the winter also.
Yeah. So you're taking produce and you're making kimchi, you're making different produce like that.
We never
preserves.
counted our hours, but it's just in my mind, if I look at how many days we spend in the kitchen compared to how many days we spend in the field, and at the end of the year, if I look at how much the garden has giving in terms of income and how much the kitchen has given, like the difference is huge.
Could you tell us more about your value added goods? Because I think a lot of farmers want to do that, or they've heard about it. The phrase we say in English, the value added, like taking your raw commodity, your crop, and transform it into something that has even more value than it would have originally. Now, the number one issue for a lot of farmers is, of course, certified kitchens and the space to have a kitchen that they can legally cook something and sell. Can you just tell us about your journey through beginning these products? And also, this will probably tie into your book, which we haven't started to talk about much yet, but if you could take us through that.
Yeah, it came to me. I never thought I would do a transformed product as part of Rizen. I was just geared toward producing vegetables. But a friend of mine came the first year I started, saying, I'm really keen on, developing recipes for you. I'm a fan of kimchi. Do you want to collaborate? So I said yes. I'm the kind of person who feel like everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but if we work on all with our strength, we can really do more powerful things together. So I'm really embracing partnerships, and that was one of the very first one. So he developed the 3 main products that we still do up to this day. So kimchi, the sesame Asian dressing, and the Mizuna pesto. So we started doing it. And basically every year we added recipes because we had either surpluses, stock coming back from market, and Chinese really don't like to waste food, so we really try to value everything. And so like that, every year new recipes were added, either by him. His name is Jean-Philippe Villemur, and then I worked with Céline Como. She's a culinary stylist. So she developed more of the recent recipes. And then more recently, we developed also the confidence to just develop our own products.
It's so funny because when you say Mizuna pesto, like for somebody that's not in the farming world, Mizuna must be like this. For me, Mizuna is like this thing that grows really easy and fast. It's such a great idea to do pesto with it.
It's delicious.
And it's one crop that's not so. It's just there, it just grows. And with the transformed products, we can be in grocery stores. So in Montreal, we have few selling points, and in the area also. And we can do Christmas markets, which add, 3-4 really good market to the season. So and the brand is really nice. Le Rizen, people know it. It's you're getting more and more famous for it too. People recognize your work in Le Rizen and vice versa.
Yeah, the kimchi I think is like the most popular product.
I love it.
Yeah.
You were asking about the kitchen. Actually, it's really simple because I'm talking for Quebec. What's happening is under 1,200 kilos of production per year. You can do it at home in your home kitchen.
Really? I didn't actually know that.
The only thing you need is to take the course on
Food safety.
which is really easy, and then get a permit. Then you do in your own kitchen. After 1,200 kilo, you can rent a commercial kitchen, which I did for a few years in Fredericksburg, like in a restaurant, going when they don't work. That's easy. And then we started setting up kitchen at the farm in a container, really basic, very small, but practical because it's on the farm. So you harvest, you come to the kitchen, you process. We're always in and out of the kitchen. That's really convenient.
Man, I can't believe it's that. Well, what does that amount of kilograms translate to in something that's a bit more tangible to understand? Any idea, like how many jars of like mason jars of something? Or?
Well, we sell the mason jars of kimchi is 650 grams.
Okay, so like let's just call it almost. That's not one. 2 of them is about a gram, let's say, or something. It's more than that, but. Or I mean, not a.
Yeah, you still need. Yeah, you need to get a good amount of production in order to go over.
But you moved out of that volume. Now you're producing a lot more. And then did I hear?
We count in tons, like the amount of Chinese cabbage we process every year.
Okay, in tons. Okay, so fields of 100-foot beds. There's a lot of them. And then, did I hear that there's a new kitchen being built on the Kokang area now?
Yes.
That was grant money that was raised to build a brand new commercial kitchen that's going to be utilized by all the different people on the land.
On the land, and also people from outside could come and rent it.
Okay, so that's something that just came out.
It's not ready yet.
But the plan is there. I saw it in the newspaper.
Yeah, the money is there. The plan is there. It's in the construction phase right now. We're expecting, hopefully in the fall, that will be ready. It will be really a huge game changer.
It's going to be a huge game changer. And it's going to create even more synergies between the different businesses that are on that piece of land.
Yeah, because we will be able to host like culinary workshop, which people ask me for a lot. And we'll be able to, cook food. And
so now you would have chefs coming in to make amazing meals on that piece of land every week. Then you could have culinary workshops on how to make your own preserves. And then you can be part of that, but other people could be coming in and doing these workshops.
Yes.
And that brings us to food sovereignty, which is another one of your big issues.
Well, it's the issue which actually,
the overarching
all the work that I do, and I'm happy you are going there because as you were mentioning the kitchen at the farm, I was going to talk about, actually this Thursday, we are organizing an event at the Baie de Betterave. It's a first meeting between local producers and the citizens, because again I felt we are not many farms in Fredericksburg, but we are quite a few. It's very diverse kind of productions. But a lot of us go to Montreal to sell produce. And with the cost of fuel rising, I think more and more we will have no choice of going back more toward local production and consumption over the next decades. And I felt like a lot of the times so it always comes to the price, because why people go to Montreal or they go to other grocery stores to buy
cheaper
because the price.
Yeah.
And then my thinking was like, okay, if we can have more local guaranteed sales, if the community could come and say, okay, like we need 500 kilos of carrots, and we will guarantee that sale to the producer, and we will put a cash down to it early in the production. So like CSA, basically community supported agriculture, will the farmer be able to provide a better price because it won't. Yeah, you reduce your cost.
So you guys are now having a meeting to explore this idea.
Yes.
Are you inviting the local Tradition, the local grocery store, because he has a big thing,
We invited them, but we did not have responses. And what we heard in the past is that they're not really comfortable in that kind of...
That's really too bad, because not talking about him specifically because they're all the same, but imagine if the grocery store would say, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy this amount from you, guaranteed. Here's the cash down. And then, I have a store. Let's all bring people here. But that's part of the problem. Like these guys are,
and that's connected to bigger problems because the reason the grocery store, from my understanding too, someone was telling me recently how like, in spite of how much our small town loves that store because it's something local, you don't have to go far, and they do have some local things.
yeah.
It still heavily relies upon the money of tourism and also like the summertime tourists, really, actually, because in the winter, I've from my understanding, is like it's just not nearly as profitable as the summertime.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Maybe because also there's a lot of summer houses in Fredericton, so a lot of people just basically come for summer.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's the camping. The camp apparently in the summer with the camping, like there's a trailer camping.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like 3 of them.
And apparently a lot of sales at the local store come from those folks.
Yeah. Well, of course, it would be great if they have the willingness to get into that conversation.
Yeah.
If they don't, then maybe we can put some pressure.
Yeah.
Or
that's where the politics come into play.
Otherwise, we will find alternative ways of doing it. So.
But I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not something that you perhaps are exploring right now. That you're doing a lot of work. You have a lot of different projects going at once. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
But don't you feel that, we're probably going to reinvent local grocery stores because these ones aren't complying? But wouldn't it be easier to enforce regulation on them to say, hey, you have to buy locally and you need to open up your shelves to local food producers because otherwise, I don't know. It's just
definitely. And I really am an advocate of the diversity of tactics. So we need to keep the pressure on our government so that to find ways to support more local agriculture. But in the meantime,
what are the alternatives?
Yeah, we can also develop alternatives. And I was really happy and proud that like the CAPE, Coopérative pour l'agriculture de proximité écologique, which is a co-op of producers, which I am part of, launched a first producers grocery in Montreal on Masson Street. Yeah. So it's the first producers-owned grocery co-op in Quebec to open, and it's going really well, and it's selling produce from the members.
Because of that, are the prices lower than they would be necessarily if they were selling through distribution?
Yeah, what they say, it's lower than in the grocery store.
And yeah, that's
for
so
local
huge.
Organic, because it's sold in bulk also.
Yeah.
So no packaging.
So I see a lot of those, and when I go to France and Europe, they're well organized and they're super nice. Mm-hmm. You go into these kind of farmer co-op, it's nice.
Yeah, in the US also.
Are they in the US?
Yes, the farmer
I haven't
union.
seen them.
Yeah, in Vermont, they have
where
they have union co-op. It's huge. Groceries.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Are we talking about that? We're not talking about that big.
They have
farmer-owned stores.
Well, it's a co-op store, maybe,
but not farmer-owned.
Okay, maybe
because
not
the one that we're talking about is farmer-owned.
Okay,
like CAPE owns, owns the concept.
Yeah,
I think there's also a difference there because the fact that it's farmer-owned, there's even more, in my opinion, like depth, like
it's true. Yeah.
Connectivity.
Yeah, because there are co-ops, but they're not like for sure in the US there are. I think isn't there one in Val David or something? A small. Like up in the anyway. There's a co-op, some sort of store there. I don't remember.
The Farm Les Petits Oignons had a store which they just recently decided to close.
Oh, they did?
Because they felt if we want to stay profitable, we need to get in into selling, more industrial products, which they did not want. Yeah. Because the cost is really high.
Yeah. Again, bringing it down to your first your first kind of like aha is like, okay, we can't ask a farm to do it all on themselves. Like Les Petits Oignons here is probably one of the most profitable, excellent farms for 25 years. They've been really good at what they're doing. But again, like, why do everything by yourself when we can be collectively owning things, collectively doing things? And
they just decided to organize themselves as a solidarity co-op,
so
which was a huge move because Véronique said she had $0 from Financière Agricole and MAPAC because of their solidarity co-op structure, because there's no, the farmers are minority in terms of ownership of the business, so they don't have access to those producers' grants. But with that model, they have the support of the community. So they were able to buy all of the assets, and they want to go towards a land trust.
Going back to food sovereignty, what do you think of the term or the phrase "feed the world"?
Huge question. I think, again, I'm an advocate of diversity of tactics. So means we need all different scales of farms. I still do believe that in the prairies, it makes sense to have, bigger exploitations, because you're doing cereals, and it's not true that a small scale with my hand
would work.
I could feed the world. But what I'm with the text, and more I'm going towards also, is that we need more planning of agricultural production, because I feel in every country, in every local municipality, we all eat the same thing. We eat cereals, we eat protein, we eat vegetables and fruits. So why don't we have all of those productions being produced locally? So we could say, okay, in Fröhlichberg, we need a farm producing cereal, one doing fruits and vegetables. So, and then we have also the processing facilities to process those foods, transform. So I feel like, again, coming back to free market, is just, there's so much things missing in the community that we need to travel far to get, or then we need to go to the grocery store, and it's coming from far away. And then it's all coming back also to the free trade agreements, where, like Quebec decided decades ago that we will produce mass pork to feed China, and it's not what's feeding us. And a lot of public money has been going toward those farms, which are right now closing down because we lost the processing facilities. So
really well documented that, in, I think it was 20 years. Actually, Hugo Latulippe, you mentioned him.
Bacon movie.
Yeah, he made the film Bacon, and it was like all the investment that went into. The idea was that the government wanted Quebec to be, one of the main exporters of pork.
Yeah, and we were probably for decades.
And then that created a lot of incentives for farmers to build these factories. And then what happened is that they cut a lot of trees because they needed to spread the manure in fields. And then the rivers got really badly polluted. And all of this was all created by government incentives, which, Stephanie, brings me to this. Like, this whole concept of better planning and organizing, the local food system, there's and comparing it to the free market, there's also this kind of like blind side where if it's planned, but it's wrongly planned, and it's fully organized in a way that has blind sides, that's also something that's possible, and that we see in other countries where it's fully socially organized, but it's not more effective. So finding that sweet spot takes I don't know what it takes really. Is it experiences? Is it kind of like have it itinerary? When you can set up something and kind of quickly see if it adjusts and change.
Well, definitely more participatory democracy, like participatory budgets, where we can really, community can come
and
in
voice.
Relationship with the power and decide where our money goes and how. And the task is huge, and we're just trying to do what we can with our resources. But there are so beautiful models in the world, and the idea is not to say that farmers should become public workers. We were advocating more for like para-public model, where the community still decides locally what is best for us, but the public and government support that work, but they don't control. And we're not talking about socialism.
No, I like your kind of hospital analogy is a pretty it's a pretty clear one. We can all understand this, and it'd be interesting to really do a study of how a hospital is run and operated and owned, and if we could have farm hubs that are just the same, why not?
So I'm reading more and more about the need to go beyond private property and going towards the commons.
Yeah.
And one way they say you can support the commons is by social cotizations. You know, in Quebec, like every worker,
they pay
on your pay. Some money goes toward parental
daycare, healthcare.
Different things. So like that, you could have a new cotization for
agriculture.
Local sustainable agriculture, so to support farms. So that's a way that the government can finance those projects.
And that's key too, that it has to be specified that it's for local agroecological, let's say, because otherwise it will just be like, yep, some of your money is going to go to the 1 million acre glyphosate corn farms in the,
Can you tell us what you think about that word agroecology? Because Via Campesina uses it and has been using it for 20 years.
Yeah.
I've started to use it now, but I know that in the U.S. it's fairly new. People
it's a new word to me.
They don't know that word.
Okay.
What's your relationship with that word?
Well, Via Campesina has been developing the word, if not creating it, for decades. And there's one quote that one staff of Via Campesina said a few years ago, and it's became like the slogan. So it's like, without agroecology, food sovereignty is only a slogan. And without food sovereignty, agroecology is just a tool.
I read that on the...
It's in my book.
Yeah, it's in the book.
So that really shows the link in between the two. So agroecology, most of the time we think of it more as farming practices. But the way Via Campesina develops it, it's very political, social, economic. So when I was talking about political training schools, they also train leaders into agroecology, peasant to peasant methodology.
Yeah.
So that they really promote, just being on farms, and one farmer just shares what he knows to other farmers. So that's peasant to peasant methodology of training and sharing knowledge and practices. And it's very social because it's supported by the farming organization, the community. It's political because it's transforming the way we farm, the way we teach farming, the way we want farming to be.
And it's connected to food sovereignty.
Yes.
It's linked.
Yeah.
But you can't do one without the other.
Yeah, it's the tool for food sovereignty to get implemented, basically.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about the word regenerative? That's really, really used now in the U.S. with all of that happening. And
yeah.
Do you feel that how do you feel about that?
Yeah, for sure. When I was writing the text on perennial farms, there's a section where I mentioned it has to be agroecological because, we heard of all of the dumping of human manure on our field that is really contaminating the land.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, you cannot talk about sustainable or perennial farm if you don't use regenerative or practices or agroecological ones. So your practices should be maintaining or ideally increasing the fertility of your soil. Otherwise, what's the purpose of doing GMO crops on a land trust that is there on purpose? It's just such, and an organization here in Quebec is doing that. We won't mention it, but yeah, that's really not the way we
creating land trusts for conventional farming?
For everything, not only agroecological, so not putting limits.
Yeah.
So allowing all kinds of
different farming practices.
Yeah.
I always feel that, like, when we're talking with different people that are fighting for farmers or for farming, I'm like, I'm not fighting for everyone in the farming scene. Like my GMO neighbor, I'm not fighting for him. Like, obviously I don't want that farmland to become a warehouse or a McDonald's, but like there's a fight inside farming. Like it's not all farming that's equal.
At the same time, fundamentally, we're all doing that work in a committed way to feed our community. It's not the same, always the same idea of what is a community, but I think that farmers that went into more conventional crops at the base, they still do it by heart. Sometimes, the choice of doing that has been more of a cultural education, or
it's handed down to them.
It's handed down. Yeah, it's presented in a way. It's we don't hang out in the same with the same people, and extension activities are going one way in conventional farming, and it's promoted. The government is supporting that.
Come on,
I've always thought that was like an unaddressed problem that still no one's really trying to solve, which is like the connection of the two sides of this farming aisle. Because it's true, like if you meet someone that comes from the more conventional world, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm a farmer, and then the two of you will look at each other and go, like as if you don't know what the other, like I've never seen you before. Oh, there's a farmer Wednesday in town, huh? Well, we have a farmer meet up at the gas station because like before we do our they're such separate worlds, but I find that that's a bit of a problem. Like if there was, maybe there would be more people going from conventional to organic if they just felt the social invitation. What do you think?
I don't feel that way
at all. Feel that way?
I really don't feel that way. I'm not saying that I'm right. I just don't feel that way. Like for me, like they're part of the problem. And it is a problem. Like conventional farming is fully subsidized by all the big ag.
Yeah.
And it's so clear, crystal clear, that, in my opinion, until that's kind of put out more and more and say, hey, you're biased. You come with in the farming scene using all this money from these companies that are using you to make a profit, their profit. You're using the land. It's collective land. You're polluting the river. Yeah. It's a collective river. Like, and I've never been the one to really kind of oppose, but that's how I feel about it. It's like, I'm just not, I don't think we're playing ping pong on the same table.
Yeah. I still, there's a part of me feeling that they're victims too of this system.
Yeah, they are.
It's just,
they just don't know.
Yeah.
It's not clear to them.
And their values are in another place than our values where we stand.
No, but anyway,
we don't need to agree on this.
No, but and my point anyway is not to not to accept what they do, but more to try to welcome them to our way, like to open a hand and be like, you know what, you could do this, and I'm gonna be like give you an open hand to join, and then maybe there's like a warmth that is, I don't know. That's just sometimes I feel like this. It's so divided that there's never a chance that anyone will cross. And
I feel like
but I could be wrong too.
Agriculture is just the same as in the whole society in general. So most people will go mainstream, and a tiny portion will go like activism. So that's what we see in agriculture. Like we have the value somewhere, and then they get the incentives from the mainstream model coming down to them.
True.
So when I introduced you, Stephanie, at the start of this conversation, I use the word activism, activist. Is that a word that relates to you? Do you think that the work that you're doing is that, or do you want to use another word? How do you feel about that?
I don't often use that word, just because maybe activist for me is like more going into like protests and doing like direct actions, which I did more in my student years. And I would be willing to do some in terms of agriculture, but we don't have organized. Although right now, UPA is organizing protests in different parts of Quebec. So it's spreading. I heard there are some coming in Montérégie.
So UPA is the national syndicate that every farmer in Quebec is under law obliged to be a part of.
Yeah, and they represent mostly more mainstream agriculture. So, but they are very struggling right now. So because of debts and the rate of interest, so they are protesting, following, I think, getting inspired by European farmers movement. I don't know. I just do the work that I feel like
needs to be done.
Yeah, and going from international to local, really, this winter I've been doing, because I was in a meeting with Via Campesina, and then, as I mentioned, I organized something really locally in Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
So I do feel the meaning and the power of working at all levels.
Do you feel that it's kind of for you coming kind of full circle,
Yeah.
coming from a global, more of a political perspective, than running your farm, really working hard? I saw you work really hard, and it wasn't always easy.
Mm-hmm.
Really making a local farm, then creating local community, and then slowly feels like you're kind of expanding back to, I want to talk about the global situation.
I think we get more inspiration from the global movement, because we're mostly organizing around our local direct issues, but of course they are connected to the global politics and agribusiness situation. But I feel like I've come to a really sweet spot where I feel my purpose in life is really fulfilled. I can really bring things with the letter. I never thought it would lead to organizing an event last week with 80 people coming from all over the province. So we called it the first Quebec encounter for perennial farms. There were a lot of land trust, nonprofit co-ops there, and everyone was so inspired to keep going the work, the movement, to putting pressure on governments and different level of governments to support more of perennial farms. And we do feel like there's a need for more representation and organizing.
It's amazing.
It is.
What do you mean exactly, by the way, by a perennial farm? Just because to the English speaker, perennial, you know what it is. It's usually a plant coming back every year,
Yes.
but you mean it in a slightly different kind of way, I think.
Yeah, we had a few discussions with Sarah Dan from Young Agrarians translating the word, because in French, when we say ferme pérenne, it really means like permanent, something that keeps there on the long term. And it could have been permanent farms. But
Just doesn't sound very nice.
It doesn't have that same growing.
and it does seems really weird, I think, when you hear it for the first time in English. But I felt like it's a new concept, so it will come into the
I
language.
actually think it sounds. I actually understand it immediately. Once I read just a moment of text, I'm like, oh, that's what you mean. Like, it's a beautiful actually phrase there.
Yeah, and one important aspect of this concept that we have not touched yet that I want to mention is basically why this new model. We talked about the limits of what's happening right now, but it's mostly the limits of the model of the family farm.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything was based on the fact that a family would, have farm and then give the farm to the next generation to keep farming. So in that way, there was continuity for some time in history. But now what we see is, first of all, the family is not a stable unit because, of course, family get divorce and separation, and the children don't necessarily want to have the farm, or sometimes only one of the children want the farm, but the other siblings want their share, so they still need to sell the land. So family is not a strong, resilient unit. And we feel like going towards more co-op or nonprofit or a farm ownership that is not based on family links, it will give more perenniality.
More potential.
And the family
Long-term
farm, that original model meant that every generation didn't need to pay a new mortgage in their lifetime. Like, the land it's there. You're just paying insurance, I guess.
And from my experience in mostly animal farming, animal husbandry, that's the number one reason why a farm would succeed, is that the next generation doesn't need to buy the farm
and the quotas
and the buildings and all of that. They can invest on to where they're at, but acquiring land to raise animals, like, forget about it. It's impossible. You just can't make it work, and the quotas and everything.
Yeah,
and that's really what I see as the problems. Like when you want to get new people into farming, you need to have people that are leaving farming kind of making it accessible. So if you've built your farm for 30, 40 years, you've invested, you've grown the farm. Now you're expecting a young person to come in and just kind of acquire that? Not possible. No. It's not going to happen. So, the other solution would be for these farms to shrink it down. Perhaps the last 10 years of the farm tenure would be to shrink it down. I don't know what they would do with the buildings, but just to kind of and perhaps have another farm come on that piece of land. But we need to grow that.
Yeah,
and
more
I
collective.
Think, and I think the work that you're doing is just kind of pushing people to think outside the box about how land is used, how farms are owned, what could be done collectively, politically, socially. And I think that's, we're there.
Yeah, I feel like if it won't come out of value, it will come out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
We're going into more and more crisis.
Yeah.
We won't have the choice
Necessity
of supporting
is the
each
mother
other.
of invention.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the book. Right?
Yeah, let's talk about the book because it's worth talking about. I know that you have a lot of things going on and perhaps the book is not fresh on your mind, but it came out, I think, was 2 years ago?
So 2 years ago, the French book was released, and then 1 year later, so last fall, the English translation was published.
To start off this conversation, could you tell us what culinary heritage means to you?
I guess culinary, traces coming from my family and my ancestors. And in the book, we talk about our family history. Basically, my parents are from Chinese origin, from Guangdong province. But my parents grew up in Madagascar. So their parents immigrated there from Guangdong. So they were already immigrants in Madagascar, and my sister explained how a lot of the Chinese produce were not available in Madagascar, so they had to produce it by themselves, cook it, or they had to invent new ways of doing.
Because your sister co-wrote the book with you.
Yeah, my two sisters, Patricia and Caroline.
Okay.
Co-wrote the book. So Patricia is talking about the family history and Chinese language, and Caroline is a dietitian, so she did more the fact sheets on vegetables, where it's coming from, and the basics of cooking, Asian cuisine. And we grew up in a family where we did not eat Chinese food every meal. Like we grew up in Montreal, in the city, so my mom would go to Chinatown maybe once a month, not that often. So she would bring back gailan and bok choy and napa cabbage. But otherwise, she would cook food from all over the world, and spaghetti and chilies and all of the classic. So, but we had the chance. Yeah, we would go to the Chinese restaurants, or when there would be weddings in the community, it would be like a feast of all traditional Cantonese food. So a lot of them are like.
So you were introduced to that.
Yes.
Even if you grew up here in Montreal, that was kind of part of what was inside.
Yes, and then I traveled to China for 9 months when I was 19 years old, backpacking, and went all over the country. And it was a time of connection for me to connect with the Chinese part of me, and also getting to know what's the more Canadian side of me, because people would say, okay, this is really Canadian out of you, but this is Chinese. So it was a really good kind of miroir or reflection for me to go there and acknowledging those two parts, which are giving richness to who I am, I guess. And farming, growing Asian vegetables was a choice for me to reconnect more with those roots, honor them, getting to know more. Like, I've learned so much about my culture and the vegetables. I've learned to get to know many new vegetables, which I didn't know before.
Yeah, some of them are pretty cool.
Yeah,
and definitely worth kind of like looking into for like the conventional small scale growers like me and others, to kind of expand their, there's more than bok choy and napa cabbage.
What are some notables that small scale growers should be looking at? All of them.
There are so many, but Malabar spinach is one of them, because, in the summertime, all of you struggle with growing lettuces that go to seed so fast. But a crop like Malabar spinach or amaranth leaf, that tolerate heat. They don't go to seed very quickly. And Malabar spinach, you sow it in the spring and you harvest it from the same plants until the first frost in the fall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it can be really profitable.
Those long beans.
Yeah.
These are crazy. Like, it's like, wow. Or these cucumbers or these sponges. And it's like,
Yeah.
like visiting your garden for me was like, oh my God, is just like, I don't know how to say. I was just kind of like, wow.
Yeah, and that's one reason why we wrote the book, is to inspire more market gardener to grow some of those. And it's been really fun to see that many of my colleagues bought the book and then tried sowing those vegetables, and now including more and more
Yeah.
Asian vegetables in their crops. So it's changing. The landscape of vegetable farming is changing slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting because so much of what we grow, it's basically arbitrary in a way of why we grow it. I mean, not necessarily. A lot of it's the culinary heritage of the main demographics in a place, like in North America at least. But what is the value, you think, of bringing these new vegetables to people and bringing them onto the scene? Like, what does it do to benefit the culture?
There are many reasons. The main, I guess, is bringing something that doesn't exist on the market. Because if you want to have organic loofah or just loofah, you need to go to a big Asian market, mostly around Montreal area. So it's not available here.
Loofah is what again? Tell us.
A loofah it's like a zucchini.
Yeah.
And then you have two types. You have the smooth type, which you use for making sponges. And then you have the angled type, which is sweeter, so better for eating. And it grows just like cucumber on a vine. So a lot of people go to these Asian grocery stores to get vegetables to cook Asian food. But then these vegetables are imported and grown in a conventional way. So freshness is really, and quality is not always there. So bringing high quality organic Asian vegetables was really something to attract people that are looking for that, and also expanding the range of things people can cook, because a lot of my customers here, we have a small, if not existent, Asian community. So most of my customers are not Asian.
Yeah, you mean in here?
In here, yeah. I can count them on my fingers, I think.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of education.
Yeah.
But now people that have been following us for a few years, they come back every year and they're waiting for them. It's become one of their staple in the summertime, at least. So.
Yeah, and in the melting pot of the modern world, we all want to cook all the different cuisines that are out there. We all have that excitement, and just like the actual person of that ethnic background that maybe is also looking for those things, but because it reminds them of childhood or other connections to their ancestry, even the people that aren't connected to the ancestry want it just as much because they want to cook.
Yeah, it's. I would say that's one of the pleasure of modern lifestyles, having urban cities where you can go and eat food from everywhere. You go to Montreal, you can have amazing food from all over the place.
Yep.
And
but getting the ingredients.
Ingredients is that's.
So that's where, and it makes me think, like in New Jersey in my past, I had really nice Mexican food, like especially food from the Oaxaca region. It was so good. And then I tried to recreate some at home here, and it was just pretty hard to find a lot of the ingredients because at least locally, they don't really exist. And then even if they do, it's it's the same big international imported things. So the fact that people locally can grow these things from different places, and it's so cool that you're doing it. But imagine if we had other ethnic backgrounds also bringing that flavor.
Oh yeah, they are African. Produced now at African farms and Latin American, and it's growing definitely.
Yeah. Are you happy with the book, how it came out, and the work, because you put a lot of work into that?
Yeah, it's been 2 years of work, and we were really happy that it's been translated, because it's not all of the French book that have the chance to be translated. So it opens up to a lot more readers. yeah, people have been giving out a lot of really good feedbacks on it, because that book, with the core line of Asian vegetables, we talk about our family, but also how to grow these vegetables and how to cook them.
Yeah.
And there are 40 recipes. And for the recipes, it's been really fun because we asked different chefs, but also members of the family and our community to provide recipes. So we have someone like Jérémy Bastien from Restaurant Monarch, who provides like high-level recipes, which you would, dedicate your weekend to do. But you have also recipes that you can do in 10 minutes when you are just in a hurry in your weekdays. So we wanted to offer something for everyone. That's also how we chose the vegetables and we chose the recipes so that everyone can, like beginner farmers, but also more advanced, can find something.
What's the story of how you and your two sisters thought up this project and went for it?
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen?
Yeah, it first started when I was doing CSA baskets with Stanislas. So he would provide organic, like classic vegetables, and I would provide my Asian vegetables in the baskets, mostly delivering to Montreal. And I felt, okay, I need to give some information about those vegetables to the customers. Otherwise, they would have no clue of what it is and what to do with it. So I asked my sister, the dietitian, to write not nutritional, but also just fact sheets on the vegetable, where it's coming from, what it is, how to cook it, how to store it. So we had all of those fact sheets after 2 years. And I felt, okay, there's not a lot of that kind of content, especially in French language, about Asian vegetables. So that's precious. Maybe we can publish it. So the idea came there, and I got the chance to meet a friend of a friend who was working for a publishing house, who was just amazed by the project. And they really took us by the hand toward this 2 years journey.
Yeah. Well, really, it's really a beautiful book. I remember I met your parents at a book at one of the Cocagne events, and they were probably really proud of that coming out. Also, the sisters coming together.
Yes, it's been the only time we've collaborated in that way as sisters, because for the farm they're not really involved. So it was really.
You're all fairly spread out, no?
Yeah, we're all across the province. One is in Rimouski, one in Gatineau. So having the book project, like we never talked to each other.
Connected you
so
all.
much. Yeah, it's been a really nice way. Also, like a memoir. Also, having all of those family stories written, and so that these stories can be passed down also to our next generation, so that we don't forget, because it's. Every generation we lose the stories and the heritage a bit.
And food with a story is so important. I've always thought that food should always have a story, and the best food does. And it has meaning because of that. And you can basically taste it, not, like the physical, but you enjoy a meal more. There's story and meaning and connection to other humans.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like that's infused into this book.
Yeah. They even say that when you eat with consciousness and joy, you will get more nutritional value out of
I've
your
heard
meal.
that too.
So the way you eat and what you eat really affects even your health in a deep way.
Do we want to do rapid fire?
Yeah, sure.
We always have a segment, Stephanie, where we ask you specific questions.
Okay.
And it's like,
they're a bit more random, so they don't fit in any one place. But my first question is there a book that you've read many, many times in your life? And what book, if so?
A book that was important for you or whatever.
It's not a farming or food book. It's really, and it's connected to my sisters. So we just talked about them. It's Little Women from Louisa May Alcott. It's like this book for us sisters. It's been really because of the connection in between the sisters and the family, I think, and going towards difficult times, but being really strong together, I think really speaks to us. And like every Christmas we would watch the movie, and and we visited the place, and it was, it's always like a family that is kind of struggling in their way, doing their own things, and despite the war and everything, but finding joy and laughter and Yeah, I
Little
think
Sisters.
Little Women.
Little Women.
That's a famous story and famous movie and famous
I've never
book.
seen it.
That's
Okay.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. Okay.
Who is the author?
Louisa May Alcott.
Okay. Yep. What advice did you hear when you were really young that you only appreciated much later in life?
Good question. Advice. Well, maybe there's one that comes to my mind, but it's maybe later. When I started getting involved with farmers movement, one of my friend farmers told me, be careful working with farmers because, they will always exploit you just because they exploit themselves. It's not maybe like...
That's interesting, though.
That's very
Elaborate,
interesting.
please.
And I just thought about it again last week while I was organizing the event, which was really like a really tiring week organizing and yeah, we work so hard. We are so committed, and so sometimes we
Expect that.
we need the support of the community, but sometimes we cannot pay everyone that helps us, and it's kind of a delicate place to be. Otherwise, in terms of more inspiring quotes, I'm reading, since I didn't talk about it, but I didn't know if you wanted short answers. But when I started the farm, in 2016, I got burnt out because I was doing everything by hand. We shoveled the beds by hand. We had absolutely no BCS or no tractors. So it was really tiring physically, but also mentally, starting a business of my own. So I got burnt out, and I read a lot of books. Like one of the most awesome book at that time was The Joy of Burnout. It really helped me understand and take some positive things out of burnout. And since then, I've always kept reading more spiritual or more stress management books, and did a lot of trainings. And now I'm into yoga, and it really helps me find the balance and maintaining and enhancing my energy to keep doing that work.
Could you give an example of Joy of Burnout, something that you really took from that book and applied to your life regularly?
Yes, one of the main things out of burnout is that you get to understand more your body. Like I get to read my body really well. Like last week, it was a really demanding week and day that we had a big event, and I could feel the tiredness and the stress below my back. So I can see, okay, now I'm really tired. But the good thing is I know what to do to come back into balance and regenerate my energy. I know exactly what to do, and I know in between 2 days it will come back to normal. So that's a feeling of not control, but being confident, being able to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. Like I know, okay, that's a very tiring day or week. It's been stressful. Some urgency came up, but it's all right because I know in 1 week I'll be all right. So I think that's one core difference in terms of burnout, because oftentimes you will feel completely out of control. That's one main thing that leads you to burnout.
For me, that secret weapon is fasting, Chris.
Oh yeah, you
Fasting for a day, fasting for 2 days. It's not comfortable at first, but I know where it's going, and then after 2 days, it's like it creates a really nice reset.
Yeah.
So I like the way you say that. It's like you can read the signs of your body, and you're like, okay, I read the sign, I'm taking an action, so I'm going to change something, rest more, or whatever you do, but you know that it's going to end up better.
Yeah.
So it kind of is empowering in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, the discipline of doing my yoga or meditation every day has been a key for me still being here today and doing everything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because now I'm doing at least 3 hours of yoga per day. So it's a huge commitment.
Wow.
But I do feel the difference.
Wow.
And that's when we're talking about perennial farms, and we need to always look at us as farmer, how can we be resilient and not like having back pain after 5 years just because we did zero stretching out of those 5 years farming. We see that. It's so sad because that's our main tool. It's our body.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling my next question, it kind of links with this, and I'll give an example from myself as well that you're making me think of. But my question is, what's the best failure that you've ever had? But linked to that is kind of what you were already saying, is a failure oftentimes comes from burnout, and there's a joy that comes of it. And it made me think, actually, this podcast, a kind of spurring forward moment of us deciding to do this was last summer. I had gotten salmonella and was out of work for a week. And it was actually just taking the rest, because we were actually, I was not burnt out, but we were just, hustling, making videos. It was hot. And just having that time to like rethink was like, we need to do the podcast. And it was only because I had that moment. And then we actually started to talk about it a lot within the Market Gardener Institute. And that's kind of what spurred like that idea forward. Otherwise, maybe we wouldn't have decided to start.
Yeah.
So what's like a great either failure or a mistake or just a challenging moment in your time that led to something better?
Yeah, for me, they're all the same in the sense that, all of the small failures or that come out of the farming day or, a bad market day or it on the bigger scale, like burnout, or also I went through disease in my farming journey too. And I've always taken that in a way to say that everything happens for some reason. That I always had that vision. So even through disease, I felt like, okay, I want to be as peaceful as possible. I want to accept what's happening, and I want to grow positively out of it. And I did, and I think it made me so strong because when you get to, when it touches your life, you feel like you understand the value of it after that every day is a gift, and I want to treasure that. I want to give my best possible so that my life is worth it. It gives a lot of meaning in everything that we do. And even when I got separated from Stanislas, I could have decided to do something else, but I kept going and starting again from scratch, a new farm where we had to, cut the trees and till but with the support of the people around me and the inner strength that I developed, everything, unfolded pretty smoothly, I would say.
And I knew you at that time that you were transitioning, and I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, it's going to be hard to find something. It's going to be hard to find somewhere to live because we all know how it is here. It can be hard to find somewhere to live and to farm.
Yeah,
it's not always it's not a sure bet that you're going to get it done in a year, but it fell together.
Yeah,
you got something, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and we had the chance to buy our house last spring, and we are so happy.
Good answer.
Yeah,
that's a great question, Chris.
Do you have something that sticks out in your? I'm just curious because I've never actually really heard you on it. On like a failure that led to something new.
Well, I think for me, like there's many failures, but the last 3 years, opening the restaurant and then just like getting more involved in business, and the cost of that for me personally was really high. And at one point, it was also a bit like you, Stephanie, just like letting it go. It's like, okay, I'm just going to let it go, and I'm going to refocus on my inside and my core strength and my core who I am. And just kind of, I refocused on that. Instead of looking at everything that was happening, like, because you weren't aware, Chris, but every now and then somebody would come say, hey, there's $20,000 missing to do that part of the restaurant, and then this problem here, and then that problem there, and I was like, oh, what did I get myself into? Why am I doing this? And in the end, I just refocusing on the inside and just kind of like being at peace on whatever. I'm not dying. It's all good. It's an experiment. This will pass, and it has. So yeah, financial stress is really stressful, I have to say.
Yeah.
And health stress.
Yes.
All my years touring, giving workshops, I would 1 time out of 2 I would get sick, and I would give these workshops at 30% energy level, give a full day workshop when you're kind of sick.
Yeah, and traveling is hard on the
so
body.
I learned a lot about fasting, drinking water. I didn't drink water.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that drinking water was like so fundamental for. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's my little story.
I guess the final question. It's a little bit similar to the previous one, but a different way of looking. What's the best difficult decision you ever made, you think?
Ever made or will
Or a
do?
notable one. One that
Could
sticks
it be in
out.
the future, like in the present and future?
Oh,
Because
sure,
I could
yeah.
talk about right now. I'm in a difficult decision where I feel it's part of Liang Farm thinking, but shifting my business from individual to more collective. So I thought for a long time going towards for a workers co-op, but recently I had a sudden flash that it would have to be a nonprofit.
Okay.
Just to take the whole business out of private property. Nobody will own it, and everyone will be able to benefit from it on the long term. So, yeah, I'm in that process of creating a nonprofit for the Rizen.
Oh, so it'll be a
Interesting.
nonprofit on the land of a nonprofit,
Yeah.
basically?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what's the main, I guess, why is it that you feel that's got to be the way? Or that you're thinking that you might want to do that?
It's really what made that switch in my mind was when I saw the movie. So a lot of decisions come from after seeing movies, but the movie from the book Rue of Kim Thuy.
Yeah, I'm happy you're talking about that.
What
movie.
is it for the
Rue.
listeners?
It's a movie based on the book of the same title from Kim Thuy. It's about both people coming from Vietnam, flooding and then arriving in Quebec. And I really felt like I wanted to get more connection with my Asian community. And I felt like a nonprofit would be a good vehicle for that. Because I felt like the mission of Le Rizen is really not only about the farm, which is in Fredericksburg. Like, we are promoting and making accessible local organic Asian vegetables. So the mission is pretty wide.
Yeah.
And we, like, more and more, I talk to American communities also and all over Canada. And I feel like we can inspire people from all over the world. And yeah, I want this business to be supported by the whole community and financed also by the public and the community, not only the owners, the workers.
I'm taking a side note to
Yeah.
invite the listeners to check out that movie. It's I haven't seen it, to be frank, but I've heard Modelen has seen it, and it's very touching.
How's it
Yeah.
spelled? So people
Rue,
can...
just R-U.
Are you?
Yeah, and it's one of our finest, I think,
Yeah.
from what I've heard. And last week I was at the house of not the House of the Commons, but I was in Ottawa,
Okay.
and
Parliament.
it wasn't Parliament. It was where there's the representative of the Queen. I should remember her name, but she's there. She's Cree, I think,
Okay.
and she had that book also
Yeah.
on display. It was very well. Anyway, it's
Yeah.
just like a pretty powerful story of Montreal and
Yeah.
Quebec and
And it comes back down to the power of words. And we were talking about poetry and words and books and how it's inspiring to see how it can still inspire so much people. And policies always come out of some kind of words of movement, of pressure, and that's where I wanted to mention the inspiration that I got from you, from the book. Like, I'm one of the 100,000s or maybe millions of people who read your book and then decided to start a farm, because it was really inspiring. Even though it was very technical, but there was a vision for local small scale diversified production. And thank you so much for that inspiration and for doing all of the things that came after the book, all of the projects that you've led with all of the challenges. And I think we really have to honor all of the legacy that you are giving us, and it makes our work much more easier. Even though it's still challenging,
Yes.
you open up the
Yeah.
path, and I think we really
Yeah.
need to acknowledge that.
Well, I really appreciate, Stephanie. Thank you for saying that. And I feel that it's well meant. For me, that when I hear something like this, it's always, my answer has always been, yeah, well, just give it back. And I think that you're really, really doing this. And I've been following your work for a long time, and it's been a while since I've stopped to really listen to you and get the feeling. And we're doing this today, and I have to say that I'm really encouraged by everything that you're doing. So keep it up. It's really
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
You're really opening minds with your heart.
Yeah.
You know, in the end, like, it comes from your heart. It's well thought about, and we're opening minds. We're opening models. We're having important conversations. And it's a lot of work to do all of that, as you mentioned. But hey, if it feels that that's your ex, like, keep doing it.
Yeah, it's really feeding all the parts of me, my soul and my heart and my mind. And
Beautiful.
So where can people find you online and your book and
So Rizen has a website, lerizen.ca. There are recipes out there, and also the books are available in the libraries. So in the US, it would be in Indigo chapter libraries, but also on Amazon. You can have it shipped anywhere in the world through Amazon.
all right.
But if some farming organizations are listening to us today, feel free to invite me, and I would be really willing to meet and
Share your story.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So that's it for this week. Again, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And Chris, it was a good time.
Yes.
Hope everyone's doing well. Hope you guys are growing. We'll see you next time. JM out.
Hope you're enjoying the podcast. These are important conversations, and we're really excited to have them and to share them with everyone. You can check out the work that we do at the Market Gardener Institute. You can check out our website, themarketgardener.com. Our mission is to multiply the number of small ecological farms around the world. And we do this by offering training, online courses to new aspiring farmers, but also to seasoned growers. We're helping them take it to the next level. So you can check out the work that we do. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter to get a lot of freebies about gardening, farming, but also about how small-scale farming is changing the world. And that's really what we're all about, and that's really what this is all about. So again, super excited that you guys are on board. We are changing the world.